All right, so unfortunately, because I was out of town last week, I wasn't able to discuss this story, but I'm going to do it now because I think it's really important just to talk about it because it's one of the biggest stories in terms of the government cracking down on people who expose the crimes of the empire. It's one of the biggest stories I've seen since, Julian Assange, which is obviously an ongoing situation that's developing alongside, Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and others who have been prosecuted by the U.S. government for exposing the crimes of the U.S. government instead of ever cracking down on the people who are actually committing the crimes. So I'm going to read you some of the details here from an American hero, Daniel Hale. I'm going to read you some of the details as to how he got convicted, and then I'm going to read you the quote that he gave at the end of his sentencing, which I really think was pretty much a perfect encapsulation of the entire situation. But here are some of the details from The Intercept, which The Intercept is apparently, they're not ever going to admit it because that would be revealing their sources, but they apparently were the people who broke this story initially of the drone program that Daniel Hale was exposing in releasing the documents that he did. So Daniel Hale sentenced to 45 months in prison for drone links. So this guy is basically responsible for us knowing the statistics. Like under the Obama administration, there was a period of time where his drone program was killing 90% unintended targets. Let me say that again. His drone program was killing 90% unintended targets, okay? 90% civilians. So these are the types of things that, an American public should know about. We should know that our government is committing crimes with our tax dollars in our name. We should be able to know about that. So he's a hero in my book for releasing the documents that he did. These are things we deserve to know about. But unfortunately, as you're going to see, because of what he was charged with, he can't even make the argument that what he was doing was in the public good. So Daniel Hale, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence analyst, was sentenced to 45 months in prison Tuesday after pleading guilty to leaking a trove of government documents exposing the inner workings and severe civilian costs of the U.S. military's drone program. Appearing in an Alexandria, Virginia courtroom, the 33-year-old Hale told U.S. District Judge Liam O'Grady that he believed it was necessary to dispel the lie that drone warfare keeps us safe, that our lives are worth more than theirs. And again, he gave a statement here that I'm going to read at the end because it's a great encapsulation. But they continue. In delivering his judgment, O'Grady, the judge, said that Hale was, quote, not being prosecuted for speaking out about the drone program killing innocent people, and that he could have been a whistleblower, but without taking any of the documents. So I don't really buy into this argument by the judge, okay? One, I don't think it would have mattered if he was a whistleblower. They probably still would have tried to crack down on him in the same way. But two, it's hard to come out and be a whistleblower on something this gigantic without the hard evidence to back it up. So it's kind of bullshit by this judge to play this semantic games of like, oh, you could have done it without releasing the documents. Not really. I mean, really, let's be honest about it. So they continue. Hale was indicted by a grand jury and arrested in 2019 on a series of counts related to the unauthorized disclosure of national defense and intelligence information and the theft of government property, in addition to documents related to how the government chooses its drone strike targets and information detailing how often people who are not the intended targets of those strikes are nonetheless killed, like that 90% statistic I just told you about. Hale was also linked to the release of a secret, though unclassified, rulebook detailing how the U.S. government places individuals in its sprawling system of watch lists. Long shrouded in secrecy, the release of the rulebook has been celebrated by advocacy groups as a triumph of the post 9/11 era. And so this rulebook that they're talking about here was used then by other people in order to get Americans or get people protected from these overreaching attempts by the government in order to put them on these watch lists without any due process, without any trials or anything like that. So not only was what he was releasing necessary for the public to know about, but it was literally used in order to protect people from violations from the U.S. government. So let's continue reading some of the details on that. Hale was also charged with disclosing a secret rulebook that we're talking about, detailing the parallel judicial system for watch listing people and categorizing them as known or suspected terrorists without needing to prove that they did anything wrong. And under these rules, people, including U.S. citizens, can be barred from flying or detained in airports and at borders while being denied the ability to challenge the government declarations about them. And the disclosure of the watch list rulebook led to apparently dozens of legal actions and important court victories for the protection of civil liberties. So again, this is a guy who is protecting your constitutional rights, and yet the government, who was violating your constitutional rights and other Americans' constitutional rights, are cracking down on him for exposing that. Not cracking down on the people who were doing the violating, but cracking down on the guy who exposed the crimes, who exposed the violations of constitutional rights. And they continue, as has become the standard practice in the US, Hale was charged under the Espionage Act, which is what they're trying to get Julian Assange with, and he pleaded guilty to one count in March. O'Grady dismissed the 4 remaining charges against Hale with prejudice on Tuesday, meaning those can't be filed again, so thankfully, at least on that front. But under the highly controversial 1917 law, defendants cannot point to their efforts to inform the public about government actions and operations as a defense for leaking classified information, and President Barack Obama weaponized the anti-spying law as a tool to hammer government employees who were sources for national security stories, particularly those that were unflattering to the government. So again, he is a national hero, and because they're charging him under the Espionage Act, he can't even make the argument that this was information that would be valuable for the public to know, even if it's information that our government is committing war crimes. Even if it's information like the 90% drone rule under the Obama administration, that they're killing not just like a percentage, not just like, oh, you accidentally killed some civilians as collateral, but like you are killing a vast majority innocent civilians. And you're turning around pretending as if this drone program is effective. It's not only not effective, but you're committing war crimes, brazen war crimes. Of course we deserve to know that information. So again, he's an American hero. And so here's what he had to say after his sentencing. This is what he wanted to say to the judge. And again, I'm just going to end it here because I think this is a perfect encapsulation of the entire situation and how the U.S. judicial system punishes those who expose the crimes while elevating and giving rewards to those who commit the crimes. So he says, quote, "I am here because I stole something that was never mine to take. Precious human life. For that, I was compensated and given a medal. I couldn't keep living in a world in which people pretended that the things weren't happening that were. Please, Your Honor, forgive me for taking papers instead of human lives." So that's what he had to say there. And listen, he's 100% right. I mean, this is the entire way that our system works here in the United States. The empire is going to defend itself, right? So they're going to crack down on people like Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Daniel Hale, Chelsea Manning, and they're going to do it under the guise of like protecting national security. You're not protecting national security by persecuting these people who reveal your crimes. Protecting national security would be not doing a drone program in the first place that kills 90% innocent civilians or unintended targets. That would be in the interest of our national security. In the case of Julian Assange, in the case of Edward Snowden, it's all the same thing. They're all overlapping. It's the same general idea. With Edward Snowden, you reveal that the NSA is violating Americans' constitutions and illegally doing mass surveillance of them. Well, he should be rewarded for that. The government, the agencies, and the people responsible for those programs are the ones who should be in jail, are the ones who should be extradited as they're trying to do to Julian Assange right now, are the ones who should be living in exile as they're doing to fucking Edward Snowden right now. So they never punish the people who are violating your constitutional rights. They never punish the people who are committing brazen war crimes across the world. They only punish the people who come out and reveal that information to the public. So listen, this is what our government is. Let's understand this. And honestly, go to this website, support him, standwithdanielhale.org, because he's being sentenced to 45 months in prison. None of those months are deserved. And again, he's an American hero.